Kia ora, I'm Erin J. Doyle. Welcome to my channel. I've decided that this is going to be a almost week writing vlog. Today is Sunday and in theory, not always in practice, but in theory I like my videos to go up on a Friday night. So it's not a whole week, but close enough. And I've decided I'm going to do this because I so desperately need to finish editing this. For those of you who haven't seen it, this is the printed out copy of my Camino story, and I still have to edit this whole approximately half of it. It's taken me a lot longer than I expected it to, partly because I think with work in the last approximately a year, work has been very stressful and very busy with a couple of quite significant deadlines and sort of changes in management and some other inconvenient, time-consuming, stress-inducing things, most of which, not all, but most of which have kind of started to wind down and be addressed. And then I also had the massive vitamin B deficiency, which I talked about in my last video, and oh my god, I have now had a vitamin B shot. It's like miracle medicine. It was amazing. I'm actually due for another one now. I'll be taking them monthly for a little while to see what happens. But I'm just like, you take that stuff and you can like concentrate and stay awake. It's amazing. So I'm hoping that my ability to do non-essential tasks in my personal life will improve as that medical issue is addressed. The other reason that it's taken me so long, I've come to realise, is the way I got it bound. So this is the like plastic spiral things. So I had to get this version because the place where I got it printed only had a big enough binding thingy in this option. The wire binding stuff, spine, I don't know what they call it, but the wire binding thing didn't go up to a big enough size to accommodate this many pages. So I had to get it this way, and I hate it. I hate it because the pages come out, like this isn't sealed, right? So the more you open it and manipulate it, the more damaged it gets. And you can't just fold it in half, right? So if I try to, it does that. That is very annoying. I want it to go all the way around and flat. So yeah, really frustrating. I don't like working on it when it's like this with this binding, because obviously it doesn't go flat, but also it's doing additional damage to the papers at the back. But I want to work on it that way because having it have to lie flat like this restricts me to working on it at a table. Like I can't just pull it out of my bag, fold it in half so it's, you know, this big, and just start working on it when I'm like at the train station or whatever. So my opportunities for little tiny accumulated work sessions are restricted because of the binding. So I think next time I do this, if they say, oh no, we only had the shitty plastic one, I'm going to instead have it put into like 2 or 3 separate bundles that are smaller and can therefore go with the wire binding, which I personally find easier to work with. So I think it doesn't help me today, but that's a thought for the future. My plan is to force myself to remember to work on it and to do the work instead of just, you know, relaxing and crocheting a cardigan like I did last month in the evenings. So I'm going to come home from work and work on the thing. That is the plan. And to force myself to do this, I'm going to vlog it. And that way, if I don't do it, I won't have a video. So this is me just like basically acknowledging that yes, it's appropriate that I was taking it easy on myself and being understanding with the difficulties I've had over the last 6 months or so, but those reasons have mostly been addressed and it's time to crack the whip. So that is what we are doing. We are also, though, today having to very thoroughly clean the house because I have a property inspection on Tuesday, and that includes having to clear out the freezer because the fridge freezer is part of the rental, and the checklist of things they expect you to have cleaned prior to inspection isn't just make sure the fridge freezer is clean, it's defrosted, and they specify you are required to empty it, unplug it, and take it outside to defrost. I'm not doing that because I have food to keep cold, and I don't think my landlord is going to replace my spoiled groceries if I leave the fridge freezer outdoors for 24 hours as they instruct. So I'm going to have to do a manual defrost where I take everything out and, you know, use like hot water and something blunt to like chip any ice out of the back of the freezer. So that's the glorious task for this afternoon that I will do after I have edited one chapter. I think that gives me a nice goal to achieve. I don't know, wording hard. Time to go and do wording in written form. So I finished that chapter, then I got a little bit into the next chapter, so I'm on page 190 and chapter 23. The next chapter finishes on page 197, so in 7 pages time I'm going to go upstairs and whip the vacuum around. I did stop and defrost the freezer already, so I'm a little bit tired now because of the ice chipping and stuff. I did actually set my camera up thinking maybe there could be some kind of neat time lapse of melting ice or something, but unfortunately I forgot to hit record, so I did that whole job whilst working around a tripod for no reason. But anyway, we're going to go back to the editing. Only 7 pages to go. Yeah, I think that's it. Apropos of nothing, I have a funny story. So, a little while ago, my radiator wasn't working. It actually hasn't been working for a year, but the building manager decided there was no point in fixing it. So I had to complain that it wasn't working and go through the whole hoopla and repeatedly remind her that it was against the law for her to appear in my home at a time of her convenience. She was legally required to give me notice. So I had to go through all of this hoopla. Anyway, So, finally got her to adhere to the law and give me notice that she was going to be entering my home for the purposes of maintenance and repair. Now, she was meant to be arriving with the plumber at like, I want to say 11:30. We got to 12:30, still no sign, and at this point I realised that I didn't need to pee immediately, but I was going to need to use the bathroom soon, and by that point certainly the plumber would have arrived, and I didn't want to have one of two possible horrible experiences. One, having to use the bathroom while he was in my home, because the bathroom opens up onto the same room that the radiator is in, and the bathroom door is holding on by a single screw. The building manager doesn't feel that it's necessary to fix it. I complained the day that I moved in that it was broken. She insisted that it's fine. For some reason decided to explain to me how sliding doors work, and has left it hanging by a thread ever since. So very rickety, very hard to close, in no way soundproof. So I don't want to use the bathroom when there is a strange man in my home. I don't think that's a ridiculous concern. The other horrifying experience that I thought was quite possible is if I just went, okay, I'm going to use the bathroom now before they arrive. Because they were already overdue, the fear was that I would be mid-bathroom use and I'm very not able to just quickly stand up and pretend it's all done, I was not on the toilet, etc., and answer the door. I was going to be stuck in the toilet when the building manager arrived, at which point, as per previous experiences, she would just screech my name from outside and then let herself in without any kind of pause. So I didn't want to, again, be in the toilet with the rickety door and all that stuff when she arrived. Like, so I decided that I would leave. The building manager could deal with the plumber and get the repairs done. I would prefer her not to be unsupervised in my home because of her complete disregard for privacy, but whatever, and I would go to the mall. So I went to the mall, used the public facilities, and then I was like, well, maybe if I run a couple of errands while I'm out here, then maybe they'll be gone. Like, if it's a quick fix, surely they'll just be gone by the time I get back. So I went to the supermarket and grabbed a couple of things, and then in the process of that I forgot that I couldn't go straight home and I should have lunch in the mall. So I instead got takeout at the mall and went straight home. Arrived home with, you know, hot food that had to be eaten immediately, and I had the plumber head down bum up in the corner by the radiator, my front door wide open, the building manager standing in the middle of my room, clearly having entered my bathroom, even though that has nothing to do with the radiator. I had left the door shut, it was wide open, and was now standing in the middle of my room with a vacuum and my extension cord that she has unplugged from what it was originally plugged into, screeching over her shoulder to the people doing repairs outside of my home, like in the balcony repairing railings and stuff, screeching at them about how the vacuum wasn't going and it must be a circuit breaker and blah 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 blah. And I just walked into this and I was like, God. So I said to her, the reason that's not working is because it's off at the wall. She had unplugged an appliance but not actually checked that the appliance itself was plugged in because the extension cord, nonsense. So then I explained that to her and she shrieked to the people outside and then she ran off, and I was just like, oh God. Didn't want to have to deal with any of this, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go upstairs and I'm going to eat my lunch on my bed. I'll just have like a bedroom picnic, because obviously my home was now a public thoroughfare and repairman access point. So upstairs I went. And it was at this point that I remembered I had already stripped my bed. So just a bare mattress and I was like, I don't want to sit on a bare mattress to eat lunch because obviously I would spill something. So I sat down on the floor. Now, the only place where I could sit on the floor and kind of, you know, have a bit of a backrest was at the very top of the stairs. So that's where I sat, ate my lunch, and the guy was still doing repairs. So I was like, oh well, I grabbed a book from next to the bed and read my book while I waited for the person to finish. And eventually he finished, he cleaned up, double checked that he hadn't, you know, left a mess or anything. At one point he also had moved a bookcase. Now this is a very small bookcase, not loaded up with books, but it does have a full dinner set on the bottom shelf, just because storage issues. And I have recently found out that dinner set is extremely valuable. It was just kind of a random dinner set that my dad gave me when I got my first home. No, apparently it's actually quite fancy. So, just because it's, you know, antique. So I watched this guy pick up the whole bookcase and then move it to the side to get out of his way, and I'm just like, but nothing was damaged. And then he very carefully moved it back, and I watched him kind of carefully make sure that it was all lined up with the creases in the carpet and stuff. And I was pleased that he had been suitably careful whilst messing with my stuff. And this was the very last thing that he did before picking up his bag and heading for the door. And so I said, thank you. And he jumped out of his skin. And he whipped around and saw me, like, sitting on the floor at the top of my stairs. And he was just like, oh, okay, and then went to shut the door, and then he paused and was like, I'll lock it for you, and like pushed the lock button and shut the door. And I was like, oh, that's a weird thing for him to decide to do, but fine. And I carried on with my day, and then I had this realization: he didn't see me come home. I think he did not have the experience of forgetting that the tenant had come home in the middle and then got a surprise when he was like reminded that they were there. I think he thinks that I was home the whole time, and that when he arrived at my door with the building manager and she shrieked my name, instead of opening the door, I just silently scurried upstairs and hid for an hour and a half. Periodically peering down at him and saying nothing. I sincerely hope that that's what he thinks happened, because if that was his experience, then he now has a story about the weirdo shut-in who like hid at the top of the stairs and said nothing until like the very end, and then just sort of a quiet thank you from the floor at the top of the stairs, like, oh dear. Obviously, if that's what he thinks happened, then I'm the total weirdo, and I am okay with that. I am okay with being the total weirdo of his story, because then he gets a cool story. Not cool. Something. Creepy? That's fine. Anyway, to editing. I think this is working. I got up to page 197, immediately stopped, quickly vacuumed. I would quite happily sit down and do another chapter and then maybe fold that laundry that's sitting there just outside of view. So I think this is working. I'll see if I can get it to work several days from now. Like, there might be a bit of enthusiasm drop off. But right now, this do a chapter, do a task, do a chapter, do a task seems to be good, and I think what it's doing is letting me have a break from each thing, because editing is time consuming, and in some ways it's also quite annoying because I'm finding errors, or things that I feel are errors, or things that I think could be improved, which were already fixed prior to a previous round of editing when I was trying to get the word count short. And I'm finding things where I'm like, I used to have a nice transition between these two scenes and now I just have a page break, and I'm like, no, I definitely need to put that paragraph back. I think it's nicer. So that's kind of frustrating because it's like, you know, so I think it's nice to have like a nice concise, you've done one chapter and you're going to stop and do a task. And yes, I'm doing boring housework tasks, but there's also things that need to be done, and which I don't want to do one after the other because I'd get tired and bored and annoyed at the housework. So kind of going back and forth between these two things makes both of them feel like a reward because they are both a break from the other thing. Does that make sense? But anyway, I don't care if it does or doesn't, it's working, so that's all that really matters. I'm going to do a little bit more today, but we're getting a little bit late in the day to film, like it's getting a bit dark, and soon people will start making noises, as neighbours do. So that's it for today. I will, if things go according to plan, check in tomorrow. It is now Friday afternoon. I've just gotten home from work, like literally haven't even de-warm clothinged. So normally at this end of the day I would, you know, change out of my work clothes, relax, like watch a video or whatever. What I'm actually going to do today though is edit at least one chapter and then probably do a chore. Straight to editing. So I edited a chapter. I'm now up to page 214 of 368. I don't know, I guess I'm making progress. I think I mentioned yesterday that I'm finding things which used to be there and that I removed when I was trying to streamline and get rid of some of the bulk because it was very big to begin with. I'm definitely finding things which I removed, which I now regret having removed. So for example, in the scene I just edited, the main character is injured, and originally they were injured and starting to shake and realising that this was shock and you know, thinking through their first aid training and what stuff they had in their pack to address it and what they should do. And then a solution. I keep kicking a thing that's under the table and it's really rattly. It's really annoying. Anyway, so in a previous round of editing I have removed all of the panicking emotional response part of that scene, and I just had the character going, oh, I have a symptom, it must be this, and then it's resolved and that's it. So it doesn't show you how much suffering the character is going through in that scene, and I think maybe I took it out because I was thinking, wow, the suffering isn't important, but it does also make the scene more interesting, so it is important, it's just not like plot relevant. So I'm reading it now going, it's missing seasoning. Like, I think in my effort to make it shorter and to get rid of extraneous stuff and to kind of focus the story on what it's about instead of all the little side stuff, I think I have actually removed too much seasoning. Like, we're a little bit breading heavy at this point. Like, we have to get back to the spices. I'm going to abandon the very weird and poorly applied food metaphor now. I had another thought. What was my thought? Yes, so main character is an artist travelling across a country she has not visited before with a sketchbook. We learn in the first chapter that she is a very good artist. Her work is on permanent display at a gallery. So, you know, she's not just, you know, a dabbler, you know, she is good. It talks about early on past commissions she has had and that kind of thing. And we also learn that she hasn't painted anything recently. So the fact that she's taking a sketchbook on this journey is kind of a small arc for her. It's not the whole thing, but her getting back into creating is part of her journey. And there are many scenes in which she has her sketchbook and she's drawing things or people. There are times when people ask to look at her sketchbook and stop on specific drawings, and part of this is a way of me giving more description of the scenery when I don't really have a scene to go with that scenery. So, you know, she's walking day after day after day, passing through multiple different towns with different ruins and churches and artworks and things to see, and she is making quick sketches as she goes. So at the end of the day she has all of this stuff in her sketchbook, but the actual scene is actually just the end of the day when she's like, you know, sitting in a bar having a drink, and her sketchbook has all of these little thumbnails of things that she's seen. And this means that, as I said, you know, you get a bigger idea of the setting in which she has been without me having to kind of go, and now she's looking at this and now she's looking at that. I feel like I'm over explaining this. Moving on. The other thing that I have done with these sketchbook pages is, if you can hear that, it's the shower head dripping, because I did scrub the shower after I finished my chapter, which is why I now look slightly damp, because I really rinsed it. What was I saying? Ah, yes. So when I'm describing the actual drawings, sometimes the style's kind of whimsical, like she's drawing something that's in front of her, but maybe she's put in sort of an imagined element. For example, there's a scene where the bar where she's sitting, in the corner there is a historic well, and the owners have put a whole bunch of potted plants around it, and then over in the other corner there's a like plastic container with a, what are they called, you know, the things, not a turtle, not a tortoise, terrapin. There is a terrapin like living in a little container off to one side, and in her drawing she's done the well and all the flowers, but then she has the terrapin in front of the well, like kind of smiling and reaching to touch a flower, so she's kind of put a whimsical element in. And then sometimes it talks about just a pencil sketch, sometimes it's a whole bunch of fine black lines just kind of scribbling out vague impressions of the shapes. And my thought process in this is that this is a very skilled, classically trained artist who has stopped creating, and so on this journey she is actively trying different art styles and different ways of drawing the things that she's seeing to kind of stretch her artistic muscles. Have not actually stated that though anywhere, so I think I need to be explicit, because I think unless you're looking for it and thinking about it, you're probably not going to string together the descriptions of the artworks that appear, you know, chapters apart. You're probably not going to string that together and go, oh look, she's experimenting. You're just going to be like, oh yeah, this is how she drew it, fa la la. So I want to do that. I want to make it clearer. And I think in doing so I should also reference specific artists or art movements, because that's something that artists do. Like if they are a person with an art degree, if they're classically trained, they mention that while they're working. So I think that should be part of her thought process. It's just not something that I have organically written in, because that's not part of my thought process when I do stuff. So I think that's something that I could do that would make her more realistic, and it would also kind of reinforce that she is a real artist, not just, you know, a potterer hobby artist. I shouldn't use the word real. Professional. She's a professional artist. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. If I do that, I'm gonna have to go back and put it in this half of the book that I've already read through, but I think it would be worth it. And I can probably, if I do it on the Word document instead of in here, then I can just do like a search and find like words relating to the sketchbook, like just sketchbook or drawing, and find those scenes specifically rather than kind of going through with a fine-tooth comb trying to find them like I'd have to if I did it on the printed version. So that's what I'm pondering. It is also, don't pull that on top of your head, it is 6:30, well 6:22, so approximately food time. So I think what I'm going to do is do one more chapter and then I will have dinner, and that might be it. I don't know if I'll check in again. Yeah, I think that's my last check-in. Anyway, back to editing. See you tomorrow, I think. Are we going to focus? Okay, hello. It is Tuesday evening. I had to go to the supermarket straight after work, so we're kicking off a little bit later than I would otherwise like to, but never mind. I'm also feeling kind of a little bit discombobulated and incoherent, so whilst this won't have an effect on the editing skill, I don't think it's going to result in the best video quality, so this might be our only chit chat for today. But at any rate, I have things to show you, so here we are. So today went into work as one does, and there were stickers in all of the pigeonholes delivered by the not particularly anonymous person calling herself the Gay Fairy. So I have assorted very cute stickers now, and I don't quite know what to do with them. Like, I'm generally not a huge sticker person. Anytime I get a sticker I'm like, oh, that's neat, what the hell am I going to do with it? So I might just put them on the door of my office maybe, because I've already got an ally sticker there. So I might just put all these little other ones around it somehow. Yeah, I don't know what else I'd do with them. But they're neat. The other thing that happened that momentarily gave me a fright. So I have been reading The Silence Project and really enjoying it. It is getting me out of a reading slump. It is about a person whose mother started a cult, and it just started off with the mother like living in a tent in the backyard, and it grew into this big community, and a few years later it all sort of came to a head with an incredibly large number of women burning themselves alive. This isn't a spoiler in any way, we're told this at the beginning, and then it's like, okay, so, you know, when I was like 22 or whatever, I saw my mother set herself on fire, and then it goes back to the day that the mother moved out of the house. So it's kind of the exact moment that this all kind of began. And then it's kind of told in like a... What's going on? How do I explain it? She is writing a book reflecting on her experiences as being the child of this woman who created this whole community and was responsible for something called the event, which is when all these women burned themselves. And the event keeps coming up through the book, so we know that it's coming, and she's talking about, you know, things that happened leading up to the event and things that have happened since the event. And I got to about the halfway point, and this is about where we know the event is any day now, like we're like a few days off the event occurring in the narrative, and I was reading it on the train and it was starting to get like, oh my god, it's going to happen. And then the train pulled into a station and the announcement says, for those of you who are attending the event, and I'm like, what? The sporting event at the local stadium. But for just a second, yep, that was a bit of a startle. So yes, enjoying greatly, but I don't know, what is the second half of the book? Like, the entire time I've been like, okay, we're building up to the mother and all these women taking their lives, and then what happens now? I assume the stuff that happened after that. But yeah, I wasn't expecting the event to be at the midpoint of the book. So yeah, curious to see what happens next. However, never mind other person book, to my book! That is what we're going to do now. It is Friday evening, I've just done a chapter and I'm up to page 238. Chapter 29. I feel like you can see where I started and ended. Like, I've done this in just a few days. Like, I didn't do Wednesday and Thursday. I didn't do anything because working at this desk really hurts my back. So actually, did I do anything Wednesday? God, it's a blur now. I definitely didn't film. No, I'm gonna say I didn't do anything Wednesday, definitely didn't do anything Thursday, but Tuesday. Oh, la blur. Tuesday I realised my back was really hurting after having done a session, and I think you can probably tell that I slouch really badly when I'm at this desk, and I think just doing it day after day at this desk is probably not good for my back. So I took 2 days off just for health reasons. So that means that I've done this amount across Sunday, Monday, Tuesday and today. So 4 days. And that might not look too impressive, but if this is what I previously managed in 7 months, I think I've actually made good progress comparatively. I totally have the mojo to do another chapter, but we're going to stop because I can feel my back. I'm not in pain, but I can feel it. So we're definitely going to have to do something about the working location. I might have to go back to working at the library. It's just that that's a kerfuffle, like getting to the library, and the fact that I'm not in the comfort of my own home, right? So I can't just take lots of little micro breaks and that kind of thing, because it's not like there's anything for me to do in the library except more sitting quietly. Like, I could bring a book and do, like, you know, read a chapter, edit a chapter, back and forth, but I think I'd still run out of sitting quietly energy before I got that much done. And I feel like if I'm gonna travel to another location, I want to get a reasonable large amount of work done, especially if I have to pay for public transport or use up travel time of walking. Like, neither of those two things are terrible, but like they are more consuming than resource consuming, I mean, than just, you know, moving to the other desk in the corner of the room you're already in. Anyway, me and my 3 beverages are going to, I don't know, watch some anime or something. Obviously this video isn't going out tonight. It'll be tomorrow, but that's fine. We kind of knew that, I think. I think I knew that. It's now Saturday and I thought I'd do a quick wrap up because I don't really think I did anything like that yesterday. So, how did it go? Obviously I didn't get to do editing on every single day. In my 2 days that I skipped, one was because of discomfort from sitting at the desk and the other one was because I did something in the evening and wasn't able to get the time slot. So what I'm going to do in this coming week is actually do exactly what I've done this week, where I get home and immediately do at least 1 chapter of editing. But in the coming week I will, I know that I won't do any editing on the same day that we have another Wheel of Time watch party, so I will do an extra chapter the day after perhaps, or maybe the day before if I'm feeling energetic. I'm also going to ensure that I don't have to go to the supermarket after work on any of those days, so tomorrow I will do a decent grocery shop to make sure I've got all my consumables covered for the week. And then the only other thing I have to deal with in order to get, you know, improved productivity appears to be which desk I work at. So for most of the time it was okay working at that desk, but I think you can really tell in the footage that I'm really slumping forward when I'm working, and that explains why I got to midweek and just couldn't really get much done and had to stop and do stretches and things and then take a break the next day. So my only real alternative, aside from like on Saturday, Sunday going to libraries or something like that, if I want to work at home, the alternative is working at my standing desk. This is less convenient because when I'm working in the corner of shame, that desk is already cleared, I can just leave my stuff out, and when I have time I can sit down and start. There's no preparations, there's no delay. Whereas if I'm trying to do stuff on my standing desk, I've got to get the clutter off that space off before I can start. So I can probably do a little bit of a declutter so that the only things I have to move are my keyboard and my mouse. That's probably easily achieved, so I might have a think about that tomorrow and see where I can put some of the bits which are on my standing desk, to see if I can move the operation to the standing desk so I've got better posture and I don't get that discomfort at my back. So aside from that, I do think it went reasonably well. Definitely worth trying again. And I am hoping I can get to the end of the draft and move on to the actually writing up of the changes properly in a few weeks' time. I don't have a set date for that, but I would like it to be completed before the end of August. I think that should be achievable if I keep to this daily routine situation. I won't, I don't think, film another vlog of it. I imagine it'll get very boring very fast because I just don't have many opportunities for B-roll. But I will at some point do a check-in and let you know how it's going. Yeah, I think that's everything. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave it a like, comment down below and let me know what your strategies would be for how to alleviate back pain if you have a crappy desk, and I will see you next time. Bye.